topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
The other way.
Hi, everyone. So today we're doing an improv session. Daria's in a car, and I'm not in my normal space either.
Yes. Talk about anxiety, right? Yes, I'm struggling a little bit today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, welcome, everyone. And so, is there a lag for me? Oh, my goodness. One of these days, I will figure out the internet connection in my house.
That's all good. It's a new house. It's a new learning experience.
Yeah, one day. I do have my cord, everybody. You know, when you lose stuff and you find it, I have the cord. I just need to plug it in.
Not the point. Because there's too much on your plate. That's the thing.
As is everyone. Now, this is the discussion we're having today.
Sure.
Daria, everybody's got an overloaded plate.
Over to the loaded. I have gone through even classes to try to speak to how I can better manage. I think everybody talks about managing their time, and it becomes one of these fantasies over time. You know what I mean? And I think I'm also one that with a little bit of, concentration issues can't always stay on the same page, so I'm kind of moving from one routine to another routine, right? And trying to keep it all in line. I think one thing was that to find out through my doctor, right, that there's actually, and I don't know if it's been since the pandemic or what, right, that there's these group classes that you can try to get into. I don't know if it's like referral. It seems like it was a referral, but a referral situation from your doctor that allows you to go in these group settings and have conversations about things that you're going through, right? I.e., maybe you're not sleeping well. So there's actually a group that I took. It was like 7 weeks of learning how to sleep. Yes, they got that. And they got it. Why? For a reason, Arti. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not the only one, right? So at the end of the day, going into that room and realizing really where my sleep issues lie, as opposed to, is it my MS? Is it insomnia? Can't think, got too many thoughts going on. What's the case? Or am I like in pain or uncomfortable and it's waking me up? Or is it my rhythm? You know what I mean? And at certain times of the night, you get your body temperature goes up and down, you know what I mean? And then the wind blows and that may wake you up. And, so, your sleep patterns that was amazing, understanding that. And then getting the opportunity to also get one, like I was saying from the beginning here, to kind of get things in order, and creating schedules and routines and trying to plan things because of my frontal lobe, right? I needed that extra help and just trying to like, okay, this is some of what I was already doing, but it had better framework to it. So I greatly encourage anyone to find maybe a program in your local area, or even suggesting to your physicians, like, to find programs like this for you guys. You know what I mean? I think it's upon us to create the demand, right? And then the supply hopefully will follow. But I just know that everyone is juggling and on a different beat. I realized the juggle that we were doing before pandemic was more focused on a lot of what the world wanted from us, as opposed to I'm now seeing people that are reaching out and finding out what the world has for them in reference to
Mm.
their purpose, and then living
Mhm.
in their purpose, working in their purpose, trying to walk in it. And I think that's the beautiful thing, which is also creating new businesses. It also creates a little bit of competition. I think that's why the social media world becomes so kind of crazy funky right now, which puts another level of stress on you. Like you're like trying to work in your passion and all this, and then it's like, oh, marketing and advertising and who's biting who, and and so then it's like, oh gosh, this thing that was supposed to be a nice like turnaround in reference to career sets tends to be something you didn't think it was. It was like one of those grass is greener on the other side scenarios. So I think running a business and as opposed to working for somebody, comes with different stresses, and I think we're all finding it. And I think a lot of us are doing career changing kind of things, and in that, it's constituting having to split ourselves thin. I think even with our kids, think about, remember when you were like, I'm homeschooling my kids for the rest of their lives. Imagine. I thought about it. It was a moment. It was a moment, okay? Because I thought I was the chick. Because I was like, oh, I taught her how to do CVC words. What? I thought I was the
Consonant, vowel, consonant. Good for you for knowing that lingo, Daria.
no, I learned it. Wait, not when I was a kid. No, when she's a kid. And not what? Not my first kid, my second kid. Okay? This is what I'm saying, right?
I
This
love
is
that you
all
just
with
brought
the
up
pandemic.
CVC. I'm so
You
happy that
understand?
you did CVC during the pandemic, which tells me that
Pandemic.
your family, that your teacher or whoever was really helping to make sure that there's some learning going on during that time.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, they were doing the virtual thing, but at the same time, there was just so much more of what, I mean, the appreciation for teachers, definitely came to the forefront. I think, I'm in a room with one. Well, at that time, she was like 5 or 6 year old, right? So I, I just had one. 21, 18, like I gave it to him. I can't even say anything when something goes down in the classroom because trust me, I don't even know where my one is somewhere in the house. Never mind 21 of them running around. So, but the anxiety that comes with these jobs that we decide to take on, you know what I mean? And are we taking them on for what reason? And I think that's what people are kind of getting back to right now is like, why did I get into this in the first place? Right? Was it to pay the pay the bills? Was it I had to sacrifice? A lot of men find themselves doing the job, not necessarily being able to fully do a career set because they do have that responsibility. Maybe not that women don't, but I'm saying when we're talking about two households, if they're separated, not in a marriage in joint household, and you're having to support another household because your child lives within there in tandem, trying to have a house of your own, right? And then also to rise up beyond where you would possibly have wanted to be in life. And I think that becomes a hard reality as the stages of life come to the forefront. You know what I mean? Like the things when we were younger, as opposed to the things now that we're older. It's just a different twist on it. Sometimes some of the same pain, some of the same things carrying in, but they definitely resonate differently. And I think that's a lot of why me journeying down, well, already dealing in the world of grief, right? But then realizing like old wounds were like peeling out left and right. You know what I mean? And because you're sitting around a table with a family, and a lot of the riffraff craziness is not about the moment of the passing. It's about what happened years ago. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it just becomes one of these things where you're like, okay, that's an old wound, right? And how do we separate and distinguish the old wound from really where we're at right now? You know what I mean? Because there's the here and the now aspects of things. And I think it's sometimes we pile everything all together, especially women, because we're so spaghetti brainish, we pile everything all together and we're like, this all has to do with the same thing and I'm about to shut down. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I mean, loaded answer, but at the same time, it, I think it creates a need for the pause moment. You know what I mean? To really just check in and say to yourself, okay, what am I supposed to be getting from this situation if universally, right? It's supposed to be nothing but good coming from this, right? So, what am I supposed to be getting from it? So I don't know. How do you deal with anxiety? Hold on one second.
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to start by first saying, like, um, so we have before I even get into my own, like, we have clinical anxiety, right? Like anxiety disorder, and so the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, the one that psychiatrists and mental health professionals who are licensed use to diagnose. So clinical anxiety, right, is the one that is causing debilitating functioning, just like major depressive disorder and even sad. I think you and I were talking about seasonal affective disorder. So
Yes.
in order to be clinically diagnosed with it, it literally, the way that I describe it to you is like it has to be debilitating where it doesn't allow you to function in your daily tasks, right? So does it cause you
Mm-hmm.
not to go to work? Does it cause you not to eat, right? Our major, if you
Right.
think about our major functionality pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now about the idea of finally what I really love about this period, Daria, that there's a couple of things. One of them that I do love while it's so intense is the idea that realizes we're all, the human condition was designed to be anxious. And I'm thinking of the book that I read that I remember in my program, this previous oh god, I can't remember his name. It was one of those people who talked about the highly anxious state that we all do exist in as the human condition, and it's bringing me to
Mm.
the fact that it's normal. And the fact that you brought up community, I think is great. That, like, I love the fact that your PCP had these groups that were referred out, which should be part of a wellness plan in general, to have groups based on conditions that don't just have to do with like an illness, but like wellness, like one that you talked about sleep, one on health, one on losing weight, like whatever it is. Like that should be part of the preventative maintenance plan, and the doctor's referrals go a long way. They're the primary source of information, and people will be more likely to do things when it comes through them anyways, right?
For sure. For sure. I think having that extra cosign, you know what I mean, on a program. Like
Yes,
we look up programs all the time online and
totally.
it's like, do I take it? Do I not take it? I don't know. But if you had your PCP saying this is going to work for you, or your psychologist, psychiatrist saying that, it's one of
Yes.
those, it's heaven, you know
We
what I
do
mean?
use their Yeah, we do use
And I
what
think,
they send us with as information, power. And Daria, there's
yeah,
information overload for people right now. I feel
oh, tell me
at
about it.
times when I'm researching, like
It
I
just,
was on a,
yeah,
it's too much. And then you want to know the resource, right? I'm always
right.
looking at the source of information. I'm like, I actually raised my hand in a presentation because it was facts about ELL learners. And I'm like, where are these statistics coming from? I'm just curious. I want to know, like, is it, and the
Right.
one of them was from the um the National Studies of Immigrant Population Studies, and I'm not saying it correctly, but that's the other thing is information overload, and we don't actually know what's right or credible anymore.
This is it, and that's why I thought the programs like that are great because it really hones in on what, instead of getting like your Google PhD, you know what I mean? It really hones in on exactly what you could be dealing with and recognizing that it gives you an opportunity to recognize it, that there's a spectrum or a span, or, there's this difference in um, the types of um, you know, the effects, because we always put just the diagnosis down there, you know what I mean? But the diagnosis is leads to all these symptoms and feelings and blah, 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 which is what the pharmaceutical companies are treating, right? But how are we actually helping people get through to these different illnesses or diagnoses with an understanding of what's coming upon them? Like for me, I'm a person that kind of wants to know really what's going to happen, uh,
Mm.
more on the pathology of things, where some people don't
Mhm.
want to know that, which I totally understand that. But at the same time, if you go into a group setting with other people that are, um, able to kind of put some gauge on, okay, the differences between you and others, or what you're dealing with others, but then also you're just not alone in doing it, that's huge in itself. um, but I definitely think that more programs like that should be pushed. And what I'm seeing, because we're up here in Boston area and it's like teaching hospital everywhere,
Yeah,
it's a lot of them are associated with the different schools, which is cool in itself because it's
that's
giving
really awesome.
yeah, it's just kind of gives it a wider span, to look at
That's
everything.
really great. It's really great, and that's what kind of where we need to go. And you were, and so I come back to the idea: what is anxiety? It's a feeling, right? Feeling of uneasiness and nervousness. So, what are you supposed to do with that? So that it doesn't just gets lodged in the body, right? It like has somewhere to go. So, um, otherwise, it just manifests and sits in our body like no other, and we don't realize that the root to a lot of our fatigue, right? If any of you've heard of adrenal fatigue, the idea actually is as the system gets overloaded. But now, I mean, I look at everything in that emotional lens, in the sense that I think it's because the system gets overloaded with the emotion not being able to go anywhere, and then it just doesn't have a place. But you asked me about how I deal with anxiety. So lately, this week, I realized I'm not dealing with certain situations pretty well, to be honest with you.
Mm.
I I think most everybody knows I'm doing this PhD program, and I had a paper that was due, and I froze, and I had imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I supposed to be doing this? Is this the right thing? And it wasn't a hard assignment when I looked at it, but something wasn't clicking, and I don't know what it. And so all of these emotions came into place 2 weeks ago, and I did not turn in my assignment. My professor was asking for it. I avoid. I avoid. So I avoided. We And then the professor had office hours. I went, and she's like, "Listen, even if it's crap, just turn in your assignment." I did,
There you
and
go.
I actually did
Yep.
higher. I actually should have turned it in quicker, because I actually would have scored a lot higher. And now, to be honest with you, I'm in the predicament of having to probably make up the class again. But and today I sat here and I'm like, is this a sign from the universe that I just don't need to be? So I'm going through a lot of anxiety right now to figure out the course and disposition of what this all means.
Right.
Then yesterday I went to an event that had a lot of people, and um I literally had I was freaking out. I was like, this is a lot of people, and I'm okay with 200, 300 people and they're dispersed, but yesterday was the first time that I was like, wow, what does this mean? So I'm going through a little bit of uneasiness with my anxiety right now to figure out. And I literally yesterday, I was talking to some teachers about anxiety and helping them to reduce it as they're getting observed in our state. As we roll out early childhood is coming under the umbrella of our Virginia Department of Education, which is awesome, but it's happening so fast and things need to take place. And the first thing that I said is, this is going to be a feeling of uneasiness. And we talked a lot about what it looks like when it gets lodged in your body. Like, do you sweat? Do you get tense?
Right.
Have a certain
How's
pain
it
in your
physically?
shoulder? Yeah, like, you know, um, Yeah, Daria, it's a great question. I feel like right now I'm not managing well, but I actually think that no a lot of people I'm talking to don't feel like they're managing well. They're really overwhelmed.
Right. And I think that when it gets to a physical state, it becomes one of those things where, like, your heart racing, you know what I'm saying? You're getting a little bit of hot sweats, you're getting a little bit of something, and the anxiety starts kicking in at the same time, and
Mhm.
you're trying to juggle multiple things at once. And not everybody can understand exactly what you're personally going through. You know what I mean? Like, I know for me in my position, the stress comes with the reality. It's not the necessarily the funeral service or the industry. It's really the people that you're entrusted to serve, and at the end of the day, they're looking for your assistance of how to walk this walk that they, number one, don't want, and I think that puts this stress on me as being a person that is really um, invested into people's lives, that it obviously is spanned out into the life coaching, the art therapy of it, and all that other stuff. It's really one of those things where I I wanted to um, find ways for myself to figure out, how I will deal with the stresses. And I think I've talked to you
Mhm.
before about, art therapy is my way, you know,
Mhm.
um, whether it be now with all these different like medias, you know what I mean? I have the ability to look at um, the different graphic design aspect ways of doing things outside of whether it be painting or additionally drawing or even writing a poem, whatever the case may be. So I think that is one way that I do it. Does it solve the problem? Always no. Sometimes it's just getting things mentally, um,
Mhm.
calm down, if nothing else. You know what I mean? And then to be able, once that system is kind of calmed down, then to be able to now attack um, the different situations. I think one thing was recognizing, like, in my depression and with like being diagnosed, um, I was going to church, and, it was like, okay, this is lasting all of the time through the staying in church. You know what I mean? I was not able at that point in time to really hold on to the joy that was being like placed before me, and it was because I was so brain fogged, right? I was depressed and really trying to I wasn't able to see through it. You know what I mean? We talk about fog, and people use that word brain fog, right? And we talk about this monkey brain as well, right? But there's reasons why they're using those terms to associate, and the fog is something that can be thick, you know what I mean, that you just
Mhm.
can't see through. And so it causes you not to be able to put things in their right boxes and deal with them or want to deal with them and to detract and pull away from them because it's just so difficult to really try to just get your mind to go to, never mind then once you're there deal with it, you know what I mean? And I remember when I go and take a yoga class on a beach in Martha's Vineyard, right? And it's amazing because it's where I had been able to even put another framework in my life, where it was, squaring up to what you're warring with, because you got to square up to it first. You know what I mean? It's not about, oh, let's just attack,
Yeah.
right? And I think squaring up comes in this moment of like taking a pause, doing what you're doing right now and saying to yourself, okay, is something off?
Mhm.
Why am I off? You know what I mean? And there could be a multitude of contributing factors. One of them, the ways that I decipher mine is kind of going through these dimensions and figuring out, okay, where am I lacking and why am I lacking it? You know what I mean? And how am I contributing to the lacking? Um, I know for me, it's been one of those things where it might have been something else, right, that causes the issue, but I'm adding to it. Like you're saying,
Right.
when you're talking about like, okay, I'm just not going to deal. I'm going to just try to just pull away. You know what I mean? Not focus on it, or, um, I think that's something that a lot of people will do, you know what I mean? But then what does it cause down the road? I um I feel like when I've done that, and still struggle to date with not trying wanting to deal, not necessarily not wanting to deal, but just knowing not having all the space mentally, emotionally to deal. Um, it sometimes it's just caused me more problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's caused me, and I think sometimes you think to yourself, oh well, it caused me that I was late for da da da, or I didn't do this, or at the end of the day, I think when it comes to integrity, and when you lose integrity, it's when it starts affecting you the most, right? And then it kind of spirals into a consistent pattern, right? Because you can't get yourself out of it. That's why I always recognize people that are struggling with different vices, right?
Mhm.
The vices come to pass because of this area of like quandary, like I don't know where to do, how to do, don't want to deal, how will I do it? My brain is smart enough to keep trying to do it, right? But if I put this other thing in place, it's going to help my brain forget about trying to do it. And so you have to recognize that that becomes cyclical to the point where then it becomes a disease, that people have to try to figure out, well, how to work out of. And when it becomes a disease, then um, then you've got a lot of people looking at you to make these changes that in reality you need so much more help than possibly what you even know.
Yes.
um, so I think there's such a spectrum on the types of stress, right? But then additionally, the how we deal with the stress, and recognizing that our lives predicate a lot of it, but then there's like this intention that needs to be had to get a hold of it,
Yeah,
you know.
that's right. Intention.
It'll
You have
get,
to have the
yeah,
intention.
for
I
sure, for
also
sure.
I also love the fact that you were talking about, even though art, you found that art is very soothing and healing for you, you also know that at the same time that's that's still that you are still trying to find a way to work with the actual feelings too. Because the stuff is coming out in that, right? The process, but it's the combination.
Exactly. It's the combination. It's the combination all the way through, is this keep telling yourself, bouncing back. It's not just, oh, I tell myself, or, I took a workshop and now it's all bad. Consistent, like going back, going back, because there's not a lot of us that want to deal with certain things. I think what I have recognized is to try to hold on to like the feel of a moment, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when I accomplish something, or when I do something against the feeling,
Mhm.
the that the feeling that comes with that accomplishment, it's trying to hold on to that, not necessarily holding on to the negative space, but holding on to the positive space in it, and then trying to say, well, I'm going to do it now, right? Because even with my MS, it's had a lot of you know probably strongholds on how I. Oh, my seatbelt is not on. Number
Oh,
one,
jeez, you're probably so engrossed in our conversation and put it
I
on.
know. I'm not driving though, just so you guys know.
Mm.
But at the same time, yeah, what was I saying? Oh, with my MS, it's one of those things where I'm continuously adapting, to whatever it decides to come to bring to the forefront, and
Yeah.
that has made it one of those things where I keep hitting that same spot. You know what I mean? And that's why the pause became one of those things where I had to embrace it. Really say to yourself, well, it's okay to just have a moment where you're not necessarily doing, but figuring out in that moment how to get back on track. And um, there's a lot of not wanting to deal, right? But at the same time, I think like I said, that calming down those emotions first, and sometimes like breath work. Um, some people are like yoga people or whatever, but I think meditation has been amazing in itself. as well.
Oh, I
Um,
totally agree. I don't
you
even know
are
what
the
I would do. I don't
you're the
even know what I would.
meditation specialist.
No, not really. I mean, I'm like good. Like I was doing it for a while haphazardly, but now I'm trying to get back into daily practice, and that's like so grounding. And also to meditate in group is really helpful.
Definitely, definitely
The
helpful because I
benefits are
think,
so great. You can feel the energy
yeah,
in a room. I mean, even on Zoom, you could totally do it. But
yeah, totally do it. I think in the room it is definitely brings another entity. I think, everything when we're talking about, face to face or in each other's space, I think that in itself
communal.
brings just these
That's the
vibrations.
communal
Yeah, that
piece.
yes,
Just like
exactly.
back in the day, Daryl, I think a lot about these women who had the balance. Like, so I always think about my grandmother when, like in India, when I used to watch, she would chit chat with her friends, talk about my grandfather for a few minutes while they're like sifting through the lentils, cleaning it up. So multitasking, which is
I love it.
natural,
Yep.
right? In the beginning of
Right.
time, natural.
Yep.
S- And
Yep.
then literally talk about whatever kids, and done. Like the neighbors, they had their little chit chat and they're set. So I think what's missing for women is this connectivity piece. And so then they have nowhere to take their anxiety, their fears, their accept themselves, their
Yeah.
body and their spirit and their mind, and it's just weighing down. And then I think
Right.
men,
And
on
I
the other
think,
hand, yeah, and men also need community, and some of them are this is so busy for them, like you said, their work lives have
yeah,
kind of been super stressful for the last infinite amount of time, mainly the last 3 years have really.
for sure.
So I think that's where the stretching is coming from.
Yeah, I totally think it's. I think when you're talking about the women, male, female aspect of things, I think you're definitely right on. I think there needs to be spaces for men, for to be even with men, but then
Oh,
also that
God,
group setting as well. It's funny because I was
totally.
talking to a young lady who is a member of AA, and so
Mhm.
what she was saying to me is like, at our church there's a group, and I didn't realize because I was just staying at church late because I go on Saturday evenings just because my Sundays, I kind of try to have this moment of where I'm not waking up first thing in the morning going out the door. So Saturday evenings is when I try to go to church. And so um, the thing about it was like the oh, I just totally lost track of.
Oh, no, did we lose Daria? Oh, I think we lost her. I think she was in I'm sure she'll come back, but I think she was just sharing her. Oh,
I'm
there
back.
you are.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So the young lady from that was in AA program, right? I had been
Mhm.
staying at church later. I didn't recognize that that program came in later, which is for obvious reasons. They have like this whole privacy policy that she explained to me. But then
Mhm.
she was saying to me, they meet there, but do you know if it's a women's group or a men's group or is it a combined? And I was like, oh, I didn't even know they separated it as much like that. You know what I mean? And so just seeing the need for the different types of groups and then they come together as one, but they first go male and female, right? And then they bring them together like once a month or something like that, where um, everybody can kind of talk, get to know each other, talk with each other, or whatever the case may be, which was so necessary. You know what I mean? And I think AA is just like one of the leaders in some of the things to be able to follow on recovery. You know what I mean? And trying to get yourself back to square one. Um, but at the same time also them recognizing that it's a continuous fight. It's like cancer, you know what I mean? You're diagnosed with cancer at the same time is your body has the predisposition, you know what I mean? So therefore there's this continuous like fighting. So that's why nutrition being so important, us taking the time to do meditation and additionally getting um you know, finding ways to choose joy at the end of the day, I think is totally necessary. you
I
know.
agree. That present living.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I definitely.
It's hard, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
hard lesson to
yeah.
learn and keep in your mind, but it really is the only way. Because otherwise
Oh,
that
definitely.
anxiety takes over, right? And so
Get all hot. When I got married, I just gotta tell you this, right
mm,
before I got married, right, I didn't know I had any anxiety issues, right?
mhm.
Could have come on about then anyway, right? But and I told you about this. Maybe you weren't there last week, but I was talking about how there's positive stressors and negative stressors, but they can have the equal effect on the body emotionally, right? And
Yes.
so I thought to myself, gosh, right before I got married, I broke out in hives. Now I had never broken out in hives before, right?
Wow.
I didn't even know like fully what a hive would be if it were on my body, right? And so I broke out in a whole bunch of hives. And not till later on understanding anxiety did I connect the dot, like, oh, that's what I was feeling. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think when you're starting to see things that on the physical level, there's definitely it's trying to tell you something. You know what I mean? It's just how do you try to find the tools that are going to work best for you? Because I could say, hey, do meditation, right? And then
Mhm.
meditation becomes frustrating. Why? Because you can't meditate, because you can't get there, because your brain's all over
And
the
just so
place.
you know, that's
You
normal
know,
because if you don't you're having racing thoughts, you know, I've talked about this
thank
before. I
you.
just want to remind everyone, just close your eyes for a minute. Your mind will race, but then you bring yourself back to that moment and you still feel something. You may not
Hmm.
feel better, but you feel something.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, but
And I
yes.
think that
Yeah.
is, and I think it's just also the achievement of taking the time for self, because sometimes you just don't do it. And it's like, that can just give me
No.
5 minutes on headspace. You know what I mean? Just 5 minutes on headspace. I've struggled with like 3 minutes forever.
Mhm.
So, it's definitely
It's
been
hard. It's hard
something that
because
actually you influenced more on me.
I'm glad. Well, because I just
Yeah,
think
for sure.
I just know that when we look at what history and we like look at nonviolent communication and this things that really bind movements together and look at what's happening in the war, like the world, excuse me. Like it is the idea
Yeah.
of when you think about what peace walks and peaceful like what was everything? How were they getting things accomplished
Oh,
in groups? They didn't
that's
use
it.
voice
That's
voices,
it.
they used right? They really used the
Yep.
power of violent communication to communicate their message.
Yep. Yep.
So
And
it's
it's funny because even like the art therapy of things to communicate in general, to share the stories.
yeah. To share
I
stories.
think
That's
it's
exactly so that's the thing. I think sharing our anxieties is so powerful. I feel like once
hmm
somebody says, "Oh, it's normal for X, Y, and Z to feel nervous about this happening," right? When I
yeah.
shared with my worker my nerves settled yesterday and she wasn't at the event, but she was like, "Yeah, I wonder what I would have done in that situation." Because why I say this to you is I would never know this about myself because I'm such an extrovert typically, but I've become more
hmm
introvert years. But
Over the
you
years, right?
literally have to figure like I'm okay sitting here analyzing things to death, but no one wants to.
Yeah. I
But I
know.
also
Well, let me ask you this. Well, that so when you're talking about what you're dealing with being different from before, right? What do you think the distinguishing change would be?
I mean, I honestly, and I was thinking about this while you were talking. I was trying to stay present focused while you were talking, but I am. But I was also
And
right
you
when you're
are,
talking
I
about
know.
that
I'm with you.
story. I know, right when you're talking about that, I was thinking, oh my god, grief and anxiety. I need to do the research on this because I don't know if anyone's like, I don't know. I like went off on this tangent in my head because I was like, wait, so grief and anxiety, like it literally changes everything. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
totally.
Like, it just changes
Totally.
everything, and so I am a different person. I am definitely someone who still loves to mingle, but I am different. It doesn't mean I'm sad, but I'm
Mhm.
definitely different. In 5 years ago, 3 would you would you have said to me, could I do a room with 750 people? I would have said, yeah, and I would have worked that room. But not now, it's different. And COVID too. I realized it was a combination of both.
Right.
Yesterday, I realized it's
Right.
combination
I
of both.
think, I think there's a set personal standard that we create, right? And then also our value systems as well that tend to impose some of the different stressors on us. You know what I mean? And then also the change in responsibilities, I think, as well. So I think the why, like when you were saying that you're like going into a room now being different from before, what about you is different, and just dissecting that, like really, what is the thing that's bringing like the originator of the anxiety and it's in the first place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be a conversation for later because we're almost out of time. But I do want to talk to you about grief and anxiety on one of our
We
because I
are
do
out of time.
yes. But I do think we could really help to identify now that we're talking about this in post-traumatic growth while I'm telling you this period that we're all analyzing and making sense of our
Mhm.
stories and figuring out what was going to bring us joy and what do we really want to be doing with our lives, yada yada, so on and so forth, where everybody's analyzing at different points, like you brought up. What
Yeah,
does it look
yeah.
like when there is this grief cycle that has shaped us for these last couple years? For sure. So that'll be a different topic for a different day.
Right, sure. We'll definitely have to get back to actually maybe even next week. Who knows? What are we talking
And
about next week? Did we talk
I don't
about
know.
that
We'll
yet?
figure it.
This is
Yes,
a good segue.
it is a good segue. Dari, I did want to share. I want us. The reason why we have this platform, you all, is really to like be vulnerable. Sucks, but if I'm doing it, Dari is doing it. We just encourage you to do it wherever that is, whether it be in your community with yourself. It sucks in a good way. It's like what's my phrase that I love? Stressed but blessed is my favorite phrase sometimes right now. Like, so there's this idea that Brené Brown talks about vulnerability, this place that we get into, and it's the place that actually you really it sucks in the moment, but to get to that authenticity, so
Mhm.
that's where you realize that
Yes.
it's all worth it, like anything is. I mean, going through a loss of
Yeah.
any
And I
type
think that's
is growth,
mhm,
right? Growth.
for sure. I think you hit right on the definition of maturity. You know what I mean? In reference to maturing in a situation and how you deal with it. And additionally how you find your ways to deal with it. I I think that it's very important for, just like you're saying, for people to do just that, is to allow themselves to journey into that space, but piecewise, not always
Yes,
everything in one moment, and that's
totally.
why we hope that this platform will help. But I definitely love when you shine a light on things, Artie. I
You
appreciate you.
too. Shining a light on the
And
fact that we
additionally,
are all do like I think sometimes people, oh, somebody looks so well put together. We're always judging a book by its cover. Remember all doing that,
oh,
but
tell
it
me
just
about it.
remind everyone, like when you openly talk about things, you will openly talk about when something sucks for you. You'll find it. And on that note, we are
For
at
sure.
time.
Sounds good.
All
Happy
right. Thanks,
Friday, and thank
Daria.
you for
Happy
shining
New
the light. You
Year.
take care.
You as well,
Yes,
everyone.
take care. Take care, guys.